your right mind, right here on We Empower Network. I'm so glad to be here today with our special guest, Bunny Roache. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Genea, for having me.
Yes, keep living in your right mind. Everyone knows that we are all about making sure that you care for yourself as a caregiver. That should be your priority. And also making sure that you're making the best and safest decision for your loved one, and that you're also creating a support system. Okay? So make sure you're doing those top 3 things for yourself in this journey, because that is most important, and you are important as well. Thanks again, Bunny, for being on the show with us today.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's a very important topic. So
It is. And today, we're going to let Bunny just share her story, talk about her book. She's an author, and give you some advice about your caregiving journey as well. So, Bunny, tell us about yourself. Give us some history.
All right. My name is Bonnie Mans Roache, and I wrote a book called Your Daughter, Your Advocate, which you can see back here. It's called Your Daughter, Your Advocate, A Daughter's Account of Caring for Her Mother Against Lewy Body Dementia in a Flawed Care System. So I like to sometimes tell people, and I probably shouldn't say this, that I don't consider myself an author. This is the only book I've ever written. Maybe I'll write another one. But I'm a daughter who was caring for her mother, and I had a story to tell, and a story to share. And as a result of that, I shared it through this book.
Awesome. I read some of the book myself, and it touched me, you all. There were several stories that Bunny shared in her book that I could relate to, you know, when caring for my mom. And so there were sometimes I explained to Bunny, I just had to pause. I had to pause because I was just going to cry and boo-hoo because I could relate to some of the stories in her book. So if you are caring for your loved one and you're not sure, you know, what decisions to make, that you need to really find resources that will help you and guide you, please purchase Bunny's book on Amazon. It's going to give you tips in the back of it. She give you resources. She give you options, you know. And so, Bunny, let's just dive into it. Yes. And tell us, how did you even, you know, come up with the idea to just write a book?
Well, as I said, I had a story. You know, this journey I don't own. I realize there's so many other people on this same journey, and no one should feel like they're alone. And after, you know, my mother's journey, our journey was over, there was just so many people that reached out to me. Other people told people to call me, and I always realized that I knew what to say because I wasn't making it up. Once you've experienced it, it's just there. And so as a result of that, I wanted to share some of the things that went wrong, some things that could have gone better, some things that did go well for us, so that other people can benefit from our experience and hopefully make their journey a little bit easier.
Yes. Wow. Well, I know when reading the book, like I said, there are stories in her book that really touch me. And one of the questions that I have for you in reference to your book, you talked about your mom diagnosis in the book. And could you explain to us exactly what is Lewy body dementia?
Well, I will tell you, I had never heard of it. When my mom was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, I had no idea what it was. And now I understand that it is a form of dementia. It is probably, I think, the second most common form of dementia. Most people have heard of Alzheimer's. But Lewy body dementia is a very common form of dementia, and it's often misdiagnosed. So people really don't know. Like I said, I'm not a doctor, but there is, you know, explanation of how it impacts the frontal part of the brain. It's very aggressive, and the lifespan after Lewy body is usually of 5 to 7 years. So there's a lot more, I guess, agitation with Lewy body dementia. And there's the memory loss, and that's why people say dementia, and I know for me, I thought memory loss. People think memory loss, you know, grandma's forgetting or mom's forgetting, but the memory loss was just the least of it.
Yes.
It was all the other symptoms that associated with it. So, yeah, I'm trying to actually make people more aware of Lewy body dementia, that it does exist, so that people can get that diagnosis if that's what their loved one has.
What are some early signs of this disease?
Well, for my mother, she was angry. I was like, why is Mom so angry at everybody? That was one of the first signs, just the personality change. She was just angry all the time. Nothing we did could satisfy her. And then there was a lot of, she would just get focused on certain things.
Yes.
She would buy certain things like soft drinks. She would buy a lot of cases of soft drinks, just things that she would focus on, things were just different. And I knew something was wrong, but at first I thought as she got older, maybe this is just how she's going to be as she gets older. But as it progressed, one day I saw my mother she just had a bottle of pills, and she got so upset, and she just threw them across the room, and she ran down the hall, and and I just froze, and I realized this is something different.
Yeah.
So I knew I needed to get an answer for what was going on with her, and she became very depressed. She would sit in a dark room by herself.
Wow.
Yeah, they're definitely, and I tell people, we may not know what it is, but you know your loved one.
Yes.
And you know when their behavior is not, the same as
It's changing.
who they were. So you know when something is not right. You know your loved one, so you'll know when, to take them to a doctor and get a diagnosis and find out what's going on.
Yeah, and don't hesitate. We talk a lot, Bunny and I, when we first met. I know we probably stayed on the phone for an hour or so and just talking and sharing our stories. And also talking about how you shouldn't be passive when it comes to caring for your loved one. You should try your best to take them to the doctor and find out what's going on with them. Because like you stated, your mom's behavior wasn't normal, and you knew that something was changing. Share with us about who was your mom before the disease, though. Share with us and tell us about your mom.
Mary Alice Jackson. My mom's name was Mary Alice Jackson, and anybody who knew her called her sister. She was known as sister, and that's because she was the oldest of her 6 siblings, and she was like a mother to them. She helped raise them when she was the oldest in the house from age 12, and she would talk about that a lot. So she was a caregiver. So because they looked at her as a mother figure, she always just embodied all of us. Like, we were her kids, but even her nieces and nephews, like everybody knew, sister, if anybody got a spanking, everybody would get a spanking. Not just her kids, everybody would get a spanking. And she she was very much a caregiver. She wanted everybody to be okay. She worked in the hospital kitchen. She was a cook.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, when she cooked a lot. We knew we were going to eat well. When she was like, who's cooking today? Sister cooking? Oh, we knew we were going to eat well.
Right.
So she was a cook, and that's how she loved us. That's how she loved on us.
Yes.
After my mother had dementia, and I remember coming to, her apartment and when she couldn't cook anymore. And we would bring food. We would bring food and put it in the refrigerator so she would have food, without cooking. And one day I came in from work, and she said, come on in. She said, fix you something to eat. Fix you a plate. And I said, okay, you got food? She said, yeah, fix you a plate. And she said, I cooked. I said, what'd you cook? And it was the food we had put in the refrigerator. But I realized that's how she expressed her love.
Yeah.
Fix yourself a plate. And so I wasn't hungry, but I fixed myself a plate.
Yes, that's right. And that goes to something else we talked about, that when your parents are diagnosed with this disease, you know, wherever they at in that moment, you be in that moment with them. You don't try to tell them, well, you know, I brought that over here. You didn't fix that. You know, or you don't try to make what is considered their wrongs right now. You be in whatever moment they're in, that's where you're at as well. Because that lessens the frustration for your loved one, and also lessens the frustration for you.
For you. Absolutely.
Tell us about, you described in the book about your mom's trauma and how you feel that the trauma may have led to or been a trigger for the disease.
Yeah, that was something I came up with, and as I say, I'm not a professional, so I don't want any doctors calling and saying, you know, I've discovered the cure for dementia. But, you know, as I talked to other people and I looked at my mom's situation and when these behaviors started, it really started when she stopped working. And then she went to take care of her mother, who was her rock. And as her mother was declining until she passed, that's when we really started to see that change. And I thought about that. And then, I don't know, Genea, if I told you the story about Bernadette Stannis. Some people may know her as Thelma from Good Times.
Yes,
And she wrote a book about her mother, who also had, I can't remember what form of dementia, but she talks about her father and her mother, you know, and their relationship was so close. And at some point, her father experienced where he was, I think, physically attacked, and it affected his brain, and he eventually he passed from that. And she said that she noticed her mother, her behavior started to change, and she developed dementia, but she noticed that it seemed to be around the same time as her father. All of a sudden, who was a fine, strong man, now all of a sudden something changed with him, and he passed. So I thought about that, and you know, I had an aunt who had dementia, and I realized when my grandmother passed, my aunt's husband passed only a few months later. Their brother passed the same year, and their first cousin, all in the same year. That was a lot. That was a lot. And I realized, I looked at my mother's history, the fact that she was the oldest of 6 siblings, and she was responsible for those children at an early age, like 12. And I thought about that because, you know, after the diagnosis, when my mom had the dementia, a lot of times she would just say, where are the children? Where are the children? Where are the boys? In her mind, she was always programmed to be sure, are they okay? And I can imagine as a 12-year-old child, you know, you're concerned, are they okay?
Yes.
Are the children okay? So I realized all of those things are traumatic. My mother also lost a baby, a full-term baby at birth.
Yes.
And we never really talked about it. But with the dementia, when the doctor asked her, how many children you have, she said 3. And that included that baby that had passed. I think it never left her. So I realized that was traumatic.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And even you talked about when she had to leave her job, when it was time for her to stop working, and how that became traumatic for her because that was her normal every day, and going to work was her family was at work. Her co-workers had become her family.
Yep, exactly. And I didn't realize at the time what that job meant to her, but she had diabetes, and the doctor had told my mother that, you know, because of her having to stand on her feet all day at her job, that she really needed to not do that job anymore. She needed to stop working. And of course, my mother didn't say anything, but when I realized it, I realized that, you know, for her health, she needed to stop working. So for medical reasons, she was able to retire early in her late 50s. And for her, that was traumatic because I realized later that was her outlet. Those were the people that she socialized with at her job. So yeah, I realized it was a traumatic event for her.
Giving up that independence, you know, that was the same for my mom. Just giving up that independence, it's just hard.
It's hard,
you know.
yeah, it's hard.
After you have done something for so long, you know, you've taken care of your family for so many years, you've gone to work for so many years, and now your life is changing. You have to give up your independence. And those that are diagnosed with Lewy body dementia or any other type of dementia, they're frustrated on the inside. And they're not understanding what's going on. They know that they're changing as well, but they're not sure how to balance the changes and the transitions that are happening in their life.
Especially if they don't have somewhere, you know, to direct.
Yeah.
You know, direct it to, if they're not really outgoing people. Like my mother wasn't one to just get up and, you know, go out and socialize with people. But the people at her job, she was comfortable with. So
she, like most of them, became lonely.
She was lonely, yeah. And depression will set in.
Yes.
Yeah, depression will set in. And I think that's an early sign as well.
Yes, I agree. How can the care system change to provide better support to help caregivers like you, like me, like others? I always consider myself a caregiver. I always say I'll always be a caregiver. I'll always be a caregiver advocate. But how can the system provide better support?
Wow. And the system consists of, I guess, so many things. The caregivers, the facilities, the things that they can do to help is, first of all, we need highly trained caregivers in the system. People who don't see our loved ones as I say, widgets. They're people. You know, understand who they are. And sometimes for people, these become jobs. And I get it. You know, sometimes they aren't paid a lot for what they do. But I think it is a job that should require a high skill. I think there's training there to help people deal with dementia behaviors much better, and see them as people and learn how to understand how to deal with the disease instead of medicating them. I mean, that's one of the things. There's so many policies and regulations which are in place for a reason, but you know, sometimes you kind of go to the opposite end or something, like trying to fix something and then you kind of break something else. Some of the policies and regulations prohibit certain things from being done in the facilities, for instance, to care, like, what do you call them, things that you put around to hold them. They can't restrict them in chairs. Things like that. So there's some things like that should be, I guess, considered in terms of, do they really help, do they harm? Cameras in the facilities. I will say that all day, is that they, you know, they lack resources in the facilities anyway, and it's all about the people being safe. So cameras are another set of eyes to help, you know, have eyes on their loved ones, which can really help the facilities. But on the other side of it, I think that a lot of them see it as a liability, risk. So to protect themselves, they don't allow cameras. Well, you know, it really should be about the person. That is definitely something I think that.
And when you talk about cameras, you think about now, if you send your child to the daycare, they have cameras at daycares, even at if you send your pet to a, I don't know what they call it, daycare for pets. They have cameras that they give you a link to, and you can actually watch your child at the daycare or watch your pet at the daycare.
And that's something.
So yes.
But if you send your parent, your mother or your father to a memory care center or nursing home, they will tell you that policy is not allowed. Now there are some. I'm not going to say they're all bad or wrong. No, I find at least one that encouraged it. but I think they all should be required to allow it.
And even if you have your parent at home and they're not at a facility, I think it's important as well to have cameras in the home. If you have to step out and you don't think, okay, mom or dad, they're still mobile, they're still able to get around, and you just want to keep extra eyes on them while you go to the store, I think it's important to also have cameras in the home, just so you can have some type of security, that level of security for yourself, or peace of mind.
And that's so easy now because they work right off of the internet. You have it on your phone, and the camera gave me such a peace of mind that before I would go to sleep at night. Last thing I would do is look at that camera, just put eyes on mom, just see that she was in the bed. Sometimes there was a caregiver there, but I knew everything is quiet. I can sleep. First thing in the morning, pick up the phone, look at the camera just to see if she's moving around and throughout the day. But the camera was such a help to be able to just lay eyes and make sure. And it also allowed her to be independent, to move around the apartment and not really realize that I was watching her.
Exactly. You have to get creative. And when you're caring for your loved one in these type of situations. Bunny, I want to talk about a sensitive topic in your book where you discuss how your mom or they almost just force your mom out of the memory care home due to what they thought was a particular diagnosis for her, but you end up finding out that really wasn't the case. Can you share that with us?
Okay, we're talking about when she was forced out because of the behaviors
and the antipsychotic medication that they put her on. So my mom was in a memory care, and granted, when she went to the memory care, I really thought, wow, I can breathe now because she fit in. Everybody there was like her. She could walk around freely, and she did, and it just seemed like it worked until Lewy body showed up. And when Lewy body showed up, Lewy body behaviors, it's like it became a problem for the memory care center, and they just wanted to medicate her. And I wasn't against the medication, but I just wanted to make sure it was safe. I wasn't aware of all the harms, but eventually they decided that she needed to be sent outside of the facility because of the behaviors. And we were sent to the psychiatric ward of a hospital, and my mom and myself spent 3 nights at a psychiatric unit in a hospital because I was right there with her in the psychiatric unit working on my job until she could get a diagnosis for her behavior. And eventually what happened is they gave her antipsychotic medications to apparently figure out which one would work for her. And this facility that they sent her to, a psychiatric facility, within 10 days, sent her into cardiac arrest as a result of those first generational antipsychotics that they were giving her. And that actually started her downward spiral. She went on life support. So I tell that story. I tell people, if you don't hear anything else that I say, this is a lesson that I learned because I didn't realize the day they sent my mother out because she had dementia, even though I took her to the memory care because she had dementia. Exactly. A place that's supposed to be specialized
exactly
in caring for those with memory issues.
Right, when the Lewy body dementia, when it started to show up. But this is what I say to people, is what I learned is that first generational antipsychotics, which are given to Alzheimer's patients to control the behaviors, if they're first generational, meaning the earlier antipsychotics, they should never be given to people with Lewy body dementia. The research shows it, and that it can be detrimental, and that's what happened in my mom's situation. She went into cardiac arrest. My mom walked into that place, talking and walking and socializing. And as a result of their decision, they caused her harm. So I want everybody to know that's why it's important to get a diagnosis.
Yes.
All dementia is not the same.
Yes.
Lewy body dementia and Alzheimer's, the treatment is not necessarily the same, especially with the antipsychotics. So if your loved one has Lewy body dementia, you want to know that because you don't want them taking those first generational antipsychotics.
Wow. And I'm sure that had to be a very challenging moment, for you.
Yes.
And in that moment, you would think that, again, you have your mom at a facility that's supposed to be trained professionals who should know this, and even the doctor should know this. And that's why you have to stay visible. That's why you have to ask questions. That's why you have to get a diagnosis and know what type of dementia your loved one has. That's very important, because I didn't know if my mom had a certain type of dementia myself. I really didn't, and I never asked. They said she was diagnosed with dementia, and then that's what we start treating. But I love how you say, even in our discussions earlier, you made a phrase, and you made sure I said it right, because I'm not going to get it right. You talked about how they were fighting the disease versus caring for the patient.
Yeah. That's
okay.
And I just came up with that because it makes sense in my mom's situation. Sometimes I mess it up too. But I always say, in making decisions, you should care for the person and fight the disease.
Yes.
And every decision that you make should be based on that philosophy. When they sent my mom out of the facility, like I said, it caused her harm. So that decision was not in her best interest.
Right.
They sent her somewhere that caused her harm.
Yes.
So it's the disease that we're fighting, and sometimes we forget that it's the disease that we're trying to get to, but there's a person. There's a real person that exists behind all of those behaviors.
Yes.
So
that was a person who did not have these types of issues or behavior before the disease. So they're still your mom. My mom was still my mother.
And so many people, they're still there, and I really believe that. And I'll tell you this story that shows that, is that when my mom was sent to the psychiatric facility, I wasn't able to, that's the only place she was, that I wasn't able to just be with her all the time. I tried, but they said you can't visit. But the caregiver there told me that there was another lady there in that facility that was crying. And they said, Miss Mary would go up to her and put her arm around her and tell her, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. And I've seen her do that after she had the dementia. I saw her do it with another lady in her senior home, where the lady was just older, and she was walking, and she could barely make it. And my mom just went up to her and she said, come on, I'll walk with you. And that was with the dementia. So I was amazed.
Yes.
I was amazed to see all the stuff I hear about the behaviors, but actually to see that type of response from someone with dementia.
Yes.
Like, we need to realize they're there and they deserve to be cared for. They're
still the same person they were before they were diagnosed. And thank you for sharing that story, because I believe that as well. And I used to have this little saying when I used to go visit my mom that, hey, she may have been diagnosed, but she was still my mother. And so she still believed in God. She still sung her songs. And like your mom still provided care. She still showed love and kindness. And those things that they did before the dementia, they are still that person. They are still doing that. That's their foundation.
Because they're fighting the disease. They're fighting the disease from their perspective.
Right.
Because sometimes, and this is kind of bothered me when I realized that sometimes my mother would have an episode, Louie would show up, and she would become so agitated, and finally, when she calmed down, there were times when she would say, I'm sorry. She would look at me and she was so, like she realized what had just happened. And she would say, I'm sorry. And I don't know why I feel like that.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Because they know that something is different.
They know that something's wrong. Yeah. So we have to realize that it's the behaviors, it's the disease we're fighting. It's not them.
Right.
We're loving them.
Yes.
We're caring for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
But even as we shared our stories, and I must let you all know, we're going to have a part 2 to this program with Bunny, because I want you to come back and share some more with us and educate caregivers. I think that's one of the key things we have to do when we have a platform like this, a network. We want to educate you as well and let you know about the resources and the tips, that we want to share with you, so you will have a better opportunity to make the right decision for your loved one. Yes. But Bonnie, what was we talked about these different stories that you shared with us, but what was one of the most challenging, I guess, things that you had either happened when caring for your mom?
Wow. Challenges. The whole journey was full of challenges.
Yes.
Finding a good caregiver was a challenge and so important, because, my goodness, if I could find a good caregiver who my mom was comfortable with and the person kind of understood her,
yes,
I could breathe.
yes,
I could relax.
yes.
And that was hard, finding people who really I felt comfortable with. And I found a few. There were some good caregivers. There were some other caregivers, I'll be honest with you, that they came. And I don't know how you can care for someone when your nails are out to here.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, there were certain things like that. So you have to go through a process and understand. But there were some who really cared. There was one particular caregiver whom we introduced her as a member of our family. We told her she was a granddaughter of one of my mother's cousins.
Yes.
And that's who she became.
Yes.
Cousin Hazel's granddaughter.
Yes.
That's how, and I think we called her that much. I think she actually thought she was Cousin Hazel's granddaughter. But she got to know my mother's name. She would call her sister. She got to know the names of my mother's family members and cousins, especially from way back. And she would just mention the names, and they could have conversations. And it's funny, we're from a rural area, it's the country, right? So a rural area of Georgia. And I remember telling her, just always say a name like, May Willie or something.
Say that name again.
I said, well, you'll always know a name. Somebody always know a May Willie from back in the day.
Yeah.
So she could do that. She did it really well. And she and my mom just, when she was with her, I could breathe and I was comfortable. Yes. So finding good caregivers was definitely, and I guess the other challenging thing that comes to mind was that pandemic, because my mom, was in a facility during the pandemic. That's a whole show.
Yes.
That's a whole show.
It is. What did you do? How did you find time to care for yourself in the journey? And then how do you find time now to focus on self-care in your after your mom has transitioned?
Okay. Remind me, because you asked me. During the journey, the self-care was, first of all, I accepted whatever help.
Yes.
My aunt, my mother's sister, Aunt Betty, I don't know what I would have done without her. But, as I said, my mother raised her siblings, right? Aunt Betty was the youngest one. So I realized that my mother was a mother to her. So whenever she was around, and she was so dependable, just to help. And like I said, a good caregiver. And there were several other people around me every now and then that offered to maybe just sit with her. That's one of the things that I did to try and help myself, because otherwise I couldn't unless I knew that she was okay. But I tried to make sure I found time to, get my hair done. But actually, when Louie wasn't there, it was actually fun for me to hang out with Mom. We would ride in the car. That would keep her calm. So, those are some of the things. And then after she was gone, I think telling this story is what
it's
is my
therapy for
way.
you.
It's therapy. And I think it was my way of grieving and just being able to tell the story and share the story, because I believe somehow it's still me and her together going through that journey by telling the story. So yeah, and I'm a member of a support group. I encourage people to always look for support groups to share and hear other people's stories. It's very helpful to be a part of a group, a support group. So I still do that.
I agree with, meeting other people that's having the same challenges in the same situation. Just meeting Bunny, just us connecting and sharing our stories has been therapy for me. We always said, man, we should have known each other when we was both, going through those challenges with our mom, and being able to have someone else to really understand what you're going through and how you're feeling and why you're screaming on the inside. I say that a lot. But we experience the same type of feelings and emotions.
Yep. Every time you talk about an experience, I'm like, wow, it's like I'm right there. Same thing, same journey, although each journey is different.
Right.
It's just so many things that's the same, and we're all fighting just these horrible diseases.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Bunny, for being on the show with me today.
Thank you so much. Always enjoy talking to you, and even though this is a subject that sometimes it's difficult to talk about.
It is sometimes, yes.
But it is important. So.
It's very important. I want you all to make sure you go to Amazon and purchase Bunny's book, Your Daughter, Your Advocate, on Amazon. It's very inspiring, and it's going to take you from the initial phase all the way to the end. And she even has pictures in here of her mom and her family and caregivers in here. So there are also tips in the back, resources and tips. So please go and purchase the book. And if you need to gift it to someone that you know is going through this same similar situation, give it to someone. Give it to someone so it will help them, so they'll know that they're not alone in this journey whatsoever.
And it's a fairly short book. There are a lot of just several short stories that I wrote in here.
Yes.
And a lot of them are funny.
Yes.
I think people have told me that, they're the stories in here that made them angry, made them cry, and then they were laughing because my mother was funny, and we laughed a lot together.
Yes.
So, and those are the times that you want to embrace.
Yes, exactly. Embrace those memories and realize again that you're not alone in this journey whatsoever. Bunny, how can we reach out to you if we want to find more information about your book, or we just need to get in contact to you? Maybe someone just needs someone else to talk to. Do you have an email address that they can reach out to you?
I definitely have an email address. It's B as in my name, Bonnie, M as in my mother's name, Mary, and my last name, Roache, Roach, BMRoach @gmail.com. And I even still have an AOL, BMRoach @AOL account as well. I'm on it all the time. So definitely when people feel that they need someone to, to just bounce ideas off of, I'm happy to talk to people about their journey.
Yes. Even dealing with physicians, dealing with memory care homes. Bunny is here to help you and give you advice. I'll share her email address with you in this particular program. And thank you all for joining. And remember to keep living in your right mind.